Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the special council meeting of April 3rd, 2025. Council, we have an agenda before you with the addition of an item that came in on April 1st from the applicant. With that to include with the agenda, could I have a motion to approve? Moved by Council Shukin, seconded by Council Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so this is a special meeting convened at the request of the property owner under section 60 item 5 of the community charter. It's to reconsider a staff decision to deny the business license application. I ask council to keep an open mind, to really listen to the applicant, to the staff, and to your council colleagues. Okay, let's begin. We have our planner, Miss Johnson, here. Perhaps we can call upon you to start us off.
Mayor Little, it's the applicant.
I'm sorry, I moved everything around. Sorry about that. If we could ask Miss Yoakum to come forward. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'm not going to belabor and go over all the information that you've got. I could say the same thing. But what I will just say, as you have said, Mayor Little, that under the Community Charter Section 65, we are asking Council to reconsider the matter and allow us a business license without the onerous stipulations suggested for a pre-incorporation building. We would be happy to be granted this license, subject to any reasonable terms, covenant, or exemption so we can achieve in order to qualify. I'm optimistic there can be some agreement. We are open to questions, but you've got it all in front of you. If there's something you don't understand, we'd be happy to explain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And the applicant will have another opportunity after the staff presentation. Okay. Saying that, let's move along to the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council and members of the public. This is just a brief presentation to add to the staff report for the reconsideration of business license for short-term rental at 779 Winfell. Just to briefly summarize the district's policy context for short-term rentals. So when an application comes in, staff reviews the land use bylaw just to determine that the short-term rental use is permitted. And when land is in the ALC, the Agricultural Land Reserve, there are additional requirements. And in the case of short-term rentals, this is explained in the ALC's information bulletin on tourist and agritourism accommodation that is available on their website. And we provide that to owners as well. And secondly, staff determine whether the dwelling is a permitted dwelling. In other words, there's records of a building permit with occupancy. So I can understand that it can be kind of confusing to understand what the difference is between a legal non-conforming dwelling under the land use bylaw and a legal dwelling under the building code. So I just put together a chart here. The land use bylaw focuses on the use and location of a structure, and this is under specific sections of the Local Government Act. And when something is legal non-conforming, that allows the existing use and buildings to continue despite any zoning bylaw changes that occur. Whereas a legal dwelling under the building code is focusing on the physical construction and safety aspects of the building. So In this scenario here, provided that the owner meets ALC requirements, the main issue is that prior to obtaining a business license for a short-term rental, the building as a dwelling has to meet the minimum life safety standards required in the BC Building Code. And since there are no records of building permit occupancy, staff is not able to determine that. And we provided the owner with an avenue of how to comply with this. And that's having the owner retain a qualified construction or design professional to do a building code compliance report. And this is provided to the building inspector to review, and that sort of starts the process of meeting minimum life safety standards to satisfy the requirement that the dwelling is a legal dwelling under the building code, which is what the business license bylaw requires for short-term rental. So for purposes of satisfying the requirement in the business license bylaw for a short-term rental, operating in a legal dwelling unit requirement is separate from land use bylaw regulations and is for purposes of the BC Building Code only. So this is the reason why staff was not able to issue a business license. The building can't be confirmed to be a legal dwelling unit. There's no physical evidence that the building was constructed as a dwelling. So we have no way of confirming that minimum life safety standards have been met. And then the second one is just meeting agricultural land reserve requirements. This is achievable. There's options for the owner to meet this requirement. And myself and the building inspector are here today for further questions. Thank you.
Okay, council. So you've read through the package numerous times, I'm sure. You probably have some questions of Ms. Johnson and or Mr. Watkins. Does anybody want to start the conversation off? Councillor Shukin.
So, Mayor Little, through you, a question to Mr. Watkins. Could I ask what would a building code compliance report entail? And could you also address the point about the standards that you would be looking at in terms of looking at an older building vis-a-vis today's building code?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Example would be for a bedroom. You need 2 exits in a bedroom. So you'd have your entrance door essentially to your bedroom, but what would another egress requirement would be a window that you could be able to climb out of. So it meets a certain dimension. So that compliance report would show that if there was a bedroom that wasn't, a window that wasn't big enough, a permit would be required essentially to put in a bigger window.
So what about things like insulation, window quality, foundations? Great. Great, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wish to ask questions, comments? Councillor Donaldson.
So this building is estimated to be built in the early 60s. 1963 was one of the dates that I saw. We have other buildings in our community that have businesses in them. And so I guess my question is, are all buildings where there's businesses in this community inspected before a business goes in? A business goes in. Good.
Yeah, every business license application will receive an inspection.
Okay, regardless of the age of the building. So one of the buildings I'm thinking of is our school, which is 1914. So all the businesses in the Maka side of the building have business license based on a building that's out of code.
Well, it's all specific to each one. Like for, I mean, mile zero would be one kind of example I could think of. But yeah, they would have had gone through the permit process. Once that permit process is completed, and then they meet all the requirements, then ultimately we can issue a business license, but nothing prior to.
Okay, so on the other side of the building where all the artists are, it's same scenario?
I don't really know what the situation is over there. I haven't really been involved in that side over there. I'm kind of separate from this application.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have another question? Comment?
I have a couple, but I'll wait till my other colleagues speak and formulate it.
Sure. Councillor Gray.
If I might ask through the chair, to Mr. Watkins, you were just responding to Councillor Shukin. The code that people meet then is today's code, I imagine, rather than the code of when the building was built?
Well, it'd be onerous to have Mrs. Yoakum to meet all of today's code requirements. So basic life safety is what we'd be looking at. Making sure that at the end of the day, guards, handrails, egress bedroom windows, like I had pointed out, tripping hazards, anything that would be deemed hazardous. But as far as bringing it into any sort of seismic or energy efficient values, that's just too onerous. You're basically having to put a new building in, which I don't think is the idea of this meeting today.
And then just to follow up, Mr. Watkins, I realized there wasn't an assessment done of the building, but there was a site visit. Did you observe any health, safety, or environmental issues that need addressing?
I didn't do a site visit.
I misread the document.
Ms. Johnson.
Through the chair, it was planning who did a site visit at the time when a development variance permit application was submitted.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor Gray?
I have a few, but that finishes that line of questioning.
Councillor Epp.
Just continuing on that, so with this particular building, what does it need to bring it up to current standard?
That's why they're Abril's qualified professional, whether it be, it doesn't have to be an architect, maybe someone that's familiar with building codes, a builder, that if he does identify, for example, the bedroom window needs to be increased, or maybe there needs to be an exhaust fan above the range installed, those would be part of that permit. So they would ultimately identify those life safety issues. A permit would be issued. I would confirm that if there was any life safety issues based on the information provided, I could ultimately close that permit and then ultimately issue a business license.
Okay. Follow-up question, Councillor Epp.
Well, I guess this would be to the planner, but say, for example, that the, that the code was brought up to the current standards in the code. Then what would the other? I mean, obviously, there's the ALC is one of the issues, but I know we've read it all. But it's there's so much information that just need maybe those specifics is what would be remaining if the building was up to code, then what's left that would need to be done to approve it?
Through the chair, either the owner meets the ALC requirements for agritourism accommodation, or the owner works with ALC and applies for the appropriate application, whether it be a non-farm use or a non-adhering residential use, to allow for a general short-term rental that's not affiliated with any sort of agritourism activity on the site. And going the route of a non-farm use or non-adhering residential use is not a guarantee. And that's an application process that will come forward to council. And they make a recommendation to forward it to the Agricultural Land Commission or not forward it. So that's something for the owner to consider and maybe even have further discussions with the Agricultural Land Commission on meeting the agritourism accommodation.
So what about the provincial regulation of having to have the short-term rental in the principal residence? Like, is there other instances where, you know, there is approval given for, you know, those older places that are obviously not principal residences?
Well, in this case, Bill 35, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, there's really no impact of that in terms of what the owner's trying to do at this point. Aside from the principal residence requirement, which is something that will come forward to council at a later date, the land is classified as farmland, and the principal residence requirement doesn't apply to farmland. But Bill 35 doesn't speak to older buildings or whatnot, so it actually doesn't have any impact here for this business license.
And I guess to the fact that it would be that it's older or would be grandfathered or whatever would also cover the fact that it is too close to the creek.
Through the chair, in terms of grandfathering with the ALC, they're just and us, we're just looking at the residential use. So it was likely legal non-conforming dwelling under the land use bylaw. It was built in 1963 as a dwelling. That dwelling, the residential use can remain. The only reason this is being triggered is because the owner is coming in to operate a business of a short-term rental, which is different than a residence. You don't need a business license for this.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Gray, then Councillor Donaldson.
So if I may, following that through the chair, the owners then can use 779 Windfall as a long-term rental at the moment without any further permitting or requirements other than potentially the ALC?
Through the chair, yeah, I mean, it's with the land use bylaw, when you have older buildings built prior to incorporation, I mean, it's really hard to determine legal non-conforming, and in this case, it's probably safe to assume that it is a legal non-conforming dwelling under the land use bylaw. The Agricultural Land Commission also has their own rules about grandfathering for dwellings built prior to 1972. And the ALC would have to speak to this, but I mean, they probably would recognize this as legal non-conforming under the ALC as well. But should there be any changes or changing use or anything like that, that triggers compliance.
So just following along then through the chair, for this to continue as a rental unit or to go back to a rental unit, there's no variance approvals required or anything like that. And if the license, say, had been granted, the life and safety were up to snuff, would there be any variances required to carry on with a short-term vacation rental?
Provided, yeah, the ALC requirements are met and they meet the minimum life safety, and there's no increases to the existing nonconformities, then the building can remain as it is. And it's the Local Government Act, Section 528 to 532, that talks about those rules. So, like, let's say the building burns down in a fire, more than 75% of it, as per the building inspectors, they have to be the ones to review that. It could not be built in the same place because it's, yeah, that's all in the Local Government Act.
Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Two questions. Is there a limit to square footage of an STR detached?
Through the chair, the land use bylaw doesn't prohibit short-term rentals, but there isn't any more details about short-term rentals in the land use bylaw. So at this point in time, square footage is affiliated with the dwelling and the type of dwelling that it is. So a detached secondary suite has a maximum size 70 square meters. We don't have any maximum sizes of principal dwellings, but in the Agricultural Land Commission for new dwellings, there's maximum size requirements for dwellings. But to answer your question, no.
Thanks for that, because I was going through these scenarios that should the Yoakams decide to move into the smaller dwelling and maybe have their home, their current residence, as an STR, it's significantly larger. And we do know, or at least I'm aware, that throughout the island, at least, there are Airbnbs with much larger STRs. So I'm just wondering if that's community, or is it the STR overall, or
through the chair, I just want to clarify that ALR land does have size requirements for STRs in the principal building. Those are called tourist accommodations. It's like our bed and breakfast requirements currently. So there is a limit to the number of bedrooms. I believe it is 4. And it can be in the dwelling or portion of a secondary suite, but yeah, there is requirements under the Agricultural Land Commission. And also in our land use bylaw, we do have bed and breakfast. So, I mean, that is a separate license.
Okay, and my second question was for long-term dwellings, like should this go back to being a rental, is it required to have a building inspection as well?
Building inspection would only be triggered if there's a request by the owner to make changes to the dwelling. So if they were to come in for a building permit for whatever reason, that would trigger, potentially looking at the whole building. But I will let Mr. Watkins speak to that section if you want.
Yeah, I would like some clarity on, so short-term accommodation requires a building inspection because there's a business license required, but a long-term dwelling does not need, or does it require building inspection?
At this point in time, the business license bylaw does not require, long-term rentals do not require a business license, so that requirement is not triggered. For all the either legal non-conforming or illegal dwellings that are in the district of Majosin, we find out about those should an application come in for something, whether that be for a building permit or I can't even think of anything else, but anything. Yeah. Or sometimes we find out things through complaints. So through the bylaw enforcement process, if we receive so many complaints and we investigate, that sometimes results in an application.
Okay, thank you. So if I could have a question then for Mr. Watkins. Mm-hmm. Just trying to understand, so we have life safety issues for a short-term rental, but we still have that same concern for a long-term rental, still housing people, whether it's 30 days or less or for 3 years? Do we require an inspection for life safety issues with a building the way it sits right now?
Not if, like Tara was saying, not if anything changes. So if there's no building permit that comes in, so say someone's renting their house long-term, there's no checks for us essentially, unless there is a permit that comes in and then look at the building as a whole. So what triggers the basically Averill coming in here is that the fact that the province has mandated businesses licenses required for Airbnbs where it wasn't required before. So essentially she has been forced in to come to get this, to operate her Airbnb. And as a result, we have to verify life safety is okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
I just had a couple of questions for the applicants, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So through the chair, this is Yoakum. You've been living at 783 Windfall for 44 years. During that time, have any health, safety, environmental issues arisen during your ownership? Thank you. Have you been able to insure 779 Windfall Road as a rental suite in the past?
Have we been able to
Has it been insured?
insured As in insurance? It's always been insured, yes.
And has the same location 779 Windfall been insured as an STVR?
Very expensive, yes, it tripled.
Has your insurance company ever raised concerns about granting insurance, or have you ever been denied insurance at 779 Windfall Road?
No, we had to renew, and at that time, that's when I found out short-term rentals require special insurance, which we got.
Thank you.
So while the applicant is up there, does anybody else on council wish to ask the applicant questions? No. Okay. So go ahead. Go ahead. Come up to the microphone.
So as far as
No, just turn the microphone on there. Thank you.
thank you. The escape windows, is there a size to those?
Yeah, there's a minimum size.
How much?
I can do that.
Okay, so the wall that the two windows, bedroom windows, cannot be increased because the wall is concrete. Is there a way to open up the bedrooms so that they're not bedrooms and it becomes a suite without bedrooms, without doors? Because as short term, it wouldn't matter anyway.
Mr. Watkins.
Yeah, that one's hard to speak to without actually having a layout to look at. Basically, a bedroom is defined by a door and having an egress window. There is some other options. Sometimes there's windows that can be fully removed, but that's up to whoever you look into having to give you that advice to meet those requirements. Yeah, that's kind of one of the bigger items that the district really can look past. In a bedroom, you need to essentially climb out of. But if you have a designer that could propose a change, so say if you are removing walls, propose a change ultimately for the building permit to ultimately satisfy those requirements to get your business license.
So a point of interest is the back door is closer to the beds than the windows are. So I don't know why anybody would want to climb up and out of a window when they can get out the back door.
Well, the idea is if a fire, so you enter your bedroom, the fire starts at that entrance to the bedroom, and you have no other access of leaving that bedroom essentially without having that window.
You haven't seen the inside.
No, I have not.
Tara did. I don't know if you looked. Okay. Something else. You keep referring, Tara, to the ALC. So what I'm hearing you say is anything that happens on the agricultural land reserve, you've brought that sort of up front in our face. Now, when you're presented with anything else in the district requiring a permit on agricultural land, do you tell them first that they have to go through the ALC for a building permit?
Through the chair, it depends on what the inquiry or the application is for. But whenever a land is in the ALR, it is sort of there is another layer of legislation. And so, yes, I do have to look at the requirements, ALC requirements, and they are present in the land use bylaw as well. So I guess the answer is yes. But not necessarily always triggering a building permit. It really depends on the inquiry.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that you kind of push this up forward front when the option in our appeal is, I think number 2 is to issue the license. You don't mention ALC, so I'm thinking if we got the license, it's then up to us to go to the ALC to apply for a short term or not, as we have seen on the short term rentals listed on Airbnb that are on ALR land.
Well, through the chair, in the agriculture ALR zone, we do talk about uses, and we do reference that any uses like listed or even if they're not straightforward listed, but they're listed in another way, such as short-term rental. The requirements of the ALC cannot be superseded. Like there's legislation around that, so planners do have to be aware of that, and issuing a license, we do have to confirm.
So I can appreciate that. I did have 3 days worth of conversation with Jason Creighton at the ALC, and I don't have it in email. I spoke to him, and I got the impression that they kind of lean towards what the municipality itself is either happy with or not happy with. They don't seem to, they say they have precedence, but I didn't get that impression. I think if it was okay with the municipality, they wouldn't interfere.
Through the chair, yes, I also did speak with Jason Creighton as well, and I think he was, yeah. I got the same answer from him as from the other ALC planners, and it's just there's lots of ways to meet the agritourism accommodation, and how I understood it is that it's can be more easily met than not easily met, but it just requires some sort of proposal by the owners. So it's really difficult.
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Everything's difficult. So is there, I would like to ask, when somebody gets their business license, can they be exempt? Because that's what I see on the Airbnb listings from the Chosen. There are a number of them that say they are exempt. So what does that mean?
Through the chair, that's speaking to the principal residence requirement. So in the issue, if your property, your farmland, and meeting the principal resident requirement under Bill 35 is not something that the province is looking at when you are registering your license, when you're registering your short-term rental with the province. So farmland is exempted from principal residence requirement. Farmland, sorry, land class as farmland. So that's what that means.
So it, okay, ALC they don't use that term, they told me.
The ALC provincial legislation is different than the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act.
Right.
And the Agricultural Land Commission did do an information bulletin on this, and they just clarified the principal residence requirement on land classified as farmland. But they do say that ALC requirements for short-term rental still stand,
Okay.
regardless.
Where
yeah.
does the exempt come in? Is that ALR?
I'm not sure.
Is that you? Because if there's a business license that's exempt, to me that's municipality.
Through the chair, it depends on where the word exempt was written.
On Airbnb.
On Airbnb. So they could be using the word exempt in relation to the Provincial Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act and not the Agricultural Land Commission. So this must be, you can have land that is not in the ALR but be classed as farmland.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you. I think that's it. Thank you.
Just
Yes.
one moment, Avril.
I have a question or two
Go
for
ahead,
Ms. Yoakum.
Councillor Shukin.
So two questions. The first one being, Ms. Yoakum, when you were talking about how you might engage the ALC to get possibly an exemption from the agribusiness requirement, or some sort of exemption so you can move ahead.
No,
I thought
no, not
okay.
for me. I was wondering where the exemption,
Yeah.
why it was getting used
Yeah.
in advertising. So nothing, not
Okay.
specific to ALR, but
Okay.
I just wondered why some people would be exempt from a business license.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. My understanding is there are very few exemptions with STRs. So yeah, who knows? But with the follow-up, I think it's maybe self-explanatory though. If you wanted to pursue a non-agribusiness option, I think you would, and again, maybe this is a question for Ms. Johnson, I think you would have to do that first before you secured a business license. I think that would be a condition we would have for issuing business licenses. You got the okay from the ALC? Is that possible? Is that the right?
Through the chair, it is up to the owner, but it is one of it can be done in tandem. Just knowing that prior to issuing the business license, both those things have to be met. So it's up to you if you would like to proceed with the ALC first. That probably is a good avenue, because if they say no, but knowing that you do have the other option of like operating agritourism accommodation. So, but
Yeah, I don't know that that's an option, because then your short term would only pertain to when you're operating as a farm. It wouldn't be a year round thing. It'd be very selective. period
then,
in the year.
yeah, then applying to the ALC might be a good thing to do first.
So my second question to you, Ms. Yoakum, is in your correspondence, your recent correspondence, you mentioned not wanting to pursue long-term rental of this property. And you cited the fact you just didn't want to deal with the hassle, if I could summarize it. I was curious about that because it strikes me that short-term rental is actually more of a hassle just because of the guest turnover. But any insights you could give us into that?
Oh, I could write a book.
Okay.
But here's a couple of big reasons. Long-term renters are able to vote. Short-term visitors cannot. And to me, that's pretty major when we are hitting that point. Oh, sorry. So your visitors do not vote in municipal affairs. What was the other one? There's another one. They are a visitor, so they respect being able to stay in your home, in your dwelling. And because Airbnb screen the visitors, if they do anything not good, it goes against their record. If I don't do anything good as a host, it goes against my record. So it's a win-win on both. They collect the money and pay us. That's Airbnb. So you don't get people leaving, giving you short notice and not paying at all. And the bottom line, our last renter was a hoarder. When I phoned up the Landlord Tenancy Act, they said you cannot evict them, you must work with them. So I end up delivering 2 truckloads of their possessions, along with the second bedroom being a chinchilla house that they had cages all the way around the walls and 6 inches deep in wood chips. That did us in. So we don't have that energy to deal with those kind of people anymore. The short term has been rewarding. Everybody's happy. They don't stay long. They can visit. They contribute to My Chosen Cafe. We get to hire some locals for cleaning and babysitting and things like that. So it was a big turning point for us, but we had just had it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to say, in the last few years through COVID and the STR thing that was a very significant issue last year, I have gained a lot of respect for people who serve as landlords. I think they're very underappreciated in society, and Ms. Yocum's provided a few more reasons for that. So, thank you.
Okay, Council, anything else you would like to add? Councillor Gray.
Yes, I wanted to ask the planner or the building inspector a few questions. What I'm struck by in the documents here is that we have a building permit on page 25 of 53, and it's variously described as a document related to Fiche for 783. In another place, it's referred to as recently found connected to 783. And I wondered if I might ask through the chair, what exactly does that mean? Where did this building permit arise from? The question being, I suppose, that it's certainly relating to the lot 779 Windfall Road, but it doesn't provide an address.
Ms. Johnson.
Through the chair, historical microfiche records are not always easy to find for properties, and this is just one that we had found affiliated with. It might not be on the card, but on the record keeping of the day, it was under the address of 783 Windfall. That's how it was located by searching that address. And so there are, I guess, I mean, that's all that we have. And it was just under 783. Not sure about how records were kept previously.
Thank you. So that sounds like a kind of a loose affiliation, but that affiliation kind of determines what happens to the building, what happens to our decision, it seems to me. Maybe I just ask a few other questions about, so there were two buildings built at a different time. If that's acceptable, I don't know. That seems to be what the record is, that they're built at different times. And the current owners tell us that the first building built was 779 in 1961 or thereabouts, and 783 was built later in 1976. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if that's the connection, it's a loose connection. I suppose we're going to have a committee discussion. We can discuss it there. But it seems that this building permit may apply to 779. Or that's really a question I have, and it doesn't sound like there's a way to sort that out other than some conversation.
Let's ask the planner for a comment.
Through the chair, I just wanted to mention that before incorporation, it was the CRD. And so, I mean, not all permit records may be accounted for. And so we just find what there is, what we inherited, I guess, when we incorporated. And in terms of like the staff report, just as part of this hearing, we had to provide you with the council with all the facts. And so this just formed one of the facts as we were putting together the pieces of the history of the property. It still doesn't negate the fact that, we still need to confirm life and safety requirements of the dwelling. But this is just a piece of a record we found, and it is hard to determine 100% what dwelling it applied to, but it's just a kind of one record, and we're missing other ones if they do exist.
Thank you.
Come to the microphone, go ahead.
Just that the signature on that.
Could you come to the microphone? Yep, that's okay.
The signature on that little piece of paper is Mac Tipton. I think he's got J.M. Tipton, and he was residing at 779. He was actually the CRD director. I'm not sure if it was in the 60s, but certainly was in the 70s. So I believe that the address should be 777, as he lived right next door to us. Okay.
So what you're saying is that this doesn't pertain to your property?
Correct.
This piece of paper.
That little one.
On
The
page
little one about
25.
a kitchen or something.
Well, we can talk about that in a minute, I suppose. It's the lot number and the plan number of the address that we're discussing, the subject property. Maybe I had a different question, which to the planner, I suppose, through the chair, about the numbering convention for street addresses in Metchosin. So I'm curious to know, would the first house on a lot typically be given the lot number and the second house another number? I guess that's typical in British Columbia, but I'm not sure about Metchosin.
I don't know the answer to that. Perhaps the planner knows?
Through the chair.
Through the chair, excuse me, to the planner.
I don't know the answer to that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else at the table have any questions or comments?
Maybe I could ask through the chair to the planner just back about the microfiche documents. Where would the information on 779 Windfall Road be filed? Would it be filed with the primary contact, that's to say the property owner file at 783, or would it be filed under 779, a secondary suite on the property?
Through the chair, we looked at both property addresses just to see what would come up. But I'm not sure if I can answer that question of how things were filed in the CRD. They filed it by principal residence. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I just have one question for the building inspector. Would fire regulations be taken into consideration? Does the fire chief have to, or the fire official have to go in and look for smoke detectors, that kind of thing? Thank you.
Yeah, that's something I would look for as well. We do the any business license issued in Metchosin requires a building and a fire inspection prior to issuance.
Okay. So since everybody is thinking about what we've been talking about, I'm just going to go to the applicant. Do you have anything else that you want to ask the planner or put forward to council at this time? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to give you as much. I'm just trying to give you as much availability to state your case and give us as much information that you want.
Maybe I could ask Chris if there's a possibility to open up or remove the bedroom doors. Because without you seeing them, like I say, the outside doors, two outside doors, but one in particular is a quicker exit than a window.
There's possibilities. I tend not to speak to anything until I have something
Right.
physical in front of me. Otherwise, it could potentially bite me later.
Okay.
So that's where your qualified professional would be able to potentially, it doesn't need to be overly complicated, but draft a proposed floor plan, which would trigger, there's a change, you're removing walls, which would trigger the building permit, and then would require myself to review it and see if it did meet code compliance.
Thank you.
So I would imagine, I'm not a building appraiser or inspector, that the reason why they would want a window for egress was if there was a fire right either at the front door or right at the door where somebody could not go through that door and access the back door. That's why they want a person to have the ability in case of an emergency to egress out a window.
Yeah, and that's exactly. So for a bedroom with, 4 walls and a door, you do need that egress window. There are bachelor suites that are rented out as Airbnbs where that doesn't become the issue. But for me, it's too early to speak on any of that. So for Avril to have her designer or somebody that's capable of drafting those plans and putting an idea forward, showing existing and what is proposed, there's definitely potential, but too early to obviously commit to right now.
Okay, Councillor Gray, then Councillor Epp.
Just pursuing that line of questioning through the chair, Mr. Watkins, what about the electrical for this health and safety inspection? Does that mean opening the walls up?
No. Typically, I would rely on an electrical declaration. So a ticketed electrician could go through that building. If there's any, immediate concerns could be addressed, but that's not through the district. That's through Technical Safety BC. I'd ultimately rely on having a copy of that declaration to put into the building permit file.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Epp.
Well, it seems just looking at the planner's report and the options, they're under the reasons to refuse the license. It seems like, given what we've heard today regarding the non-conforming pre-incorporation buildings, it doesn't seem like it would be a huge jump, just judging from what we've heard, to make this a legal dwelling unit. So, that seems to make sense. It seems like the biggest hurdle would be the Agricultural Land Commission and having to go through that. So yeah, there's just, I don't know if that's kind of makes sense or if that's the right way we can look at it or not.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Maybe we can get into the discussion now, or sure. Yeah. And I'm thinking along the same lines as Councillor Epp. It was a good session back and forth with staff and the applicant, and what I'm struck by is the potential of the building permit isn't as onerous as I thought it was coming into this, and that the focus would be on life safety matters. So to me, it strikes me there's tremendous potential, yet unrealized in terms of going through that process. And I would encourage the applicants to go down that road. And even if there was agreement on this, I almost wonder if we could, if there was agreement by the applicants to do that, I wonder if we could postpone a hard decision on this now, because I would hate to deny something that we don't have to, and that there might be other means of obtaining, again, the permit, and then even going through the ALC process as well. So, as I understand it, this is a home that has served, is a building that has served as a dwelling. I'm not aware of any complaints. It has served as a dwelling for quite some time, And so I think we could, based on that tradition, if the building permit was obtained, I think we could work with that. It strikes me.
Okay. The issue for me is that the building's is not a legal dwelling unit per the definition of the bylaw 352 2002. We really must uphold our bylaws. A business license cannot be issued by staff for a building that is not a legal dwelling unit. The district could not confirm that the cabin at 779 Windfall was constructed as a dwelling, and if it met the building code standards and the safety regulations for use as a dwelling. So it's that issue of the building not a legal dwelling unit as per the definition. I'd like to bend it, but it seems pretty clear cut to me there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm with you. I believe though that Mr. Watkins was describing a route where a building permit may be able to be obtained. Again, I appreciate Mr. Watkins is being cautious until he gets information, but a building permit may be able to be obtained based on the general sort of outlook that Mr. Watkins outlined. So I think the possibility of getting that is there. So I'm putting it on a more sound legal footing.
Yeah,
So.
I'm going to ask for a comment from our deputy corporate officer.
Through the chair, I believe what Councillor Shukin is wanting is on page 11 of 53.
Mhm.
Option 1, to uphold the refusal of the license with written reasons until, and then option A, the building has been confirmed to be a legal dwelling unit as per the definition short-term rental in the chosen business license bylaw number 352.
Answer that. Yeah.
It's through that one on page 11, 1A. Yep. So it would be to uphold, which would be to deny again the application for the business license for those reasons. Councillor Epp, did you have something? Nope. Sorry, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm on your wavelength, Mayor Little. And where I'm curious about is what does this building permit on page 25 refer to? And so when I look at the district zoning maps and the CRD maps, they show 779 as a lot number for the property where both 779 and 783 are located. If the numbering convention is that street addresses start with a lot number, then that would mean that 779 was built first and 783 was built later. I checked the BC assessment online records yesterday, and they include an entry for 779 Windfall Road, but nothing for 783. And they does say the main two-story boot dwelling was built, they say, in 1974. So 783 was built in 1974. The applicants say 779 was built in 61 and 783 in 1976. So it seems the balance of probabilities that this building permit applies to 779 Windfall Road, except we just heard from the applicant that maybe it doesn't. So up until we heard from the applicant, I was thinking this looks like a legal dwelling because there's a building permit here that the strength of it applying to 779 might be stronger than it applying to 783.
I concur with you that this is difficult because we want to base our decisions based on the evidence and the facts, and this is murky, and we have to rely on what has been provided in our council agenda, what has been put forward by the applicant. And yeah, I admit this is difficult, and it's not as clear cut as I would have liked. But I still go back to that the building, number one, the building is not a legal dwelling unit as per the definition. Councillor Gray and then Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I would suggest the evidence goes either way and perhaps stronger in the direction of 779 being a legal unit. But I don't disagree with you. We're left not knowing for sure what's going on given what we've heard today.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Watkins and also Ms. Johnson if they have any views on this uncertainty about whether that permit applies or not. Is it the balance through you? Is there a balance of probabilities that it applies to 779 or the other property, or do you just need to consider that since it isn't as specific, it does not apply? I think that's what staff position is.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great.
Continue.
So through you, Mayor Little, I wonder, again, when Mr. Watkins was speaking, I saw a glimmer of hope in terms of not being able to address both our requirements to have a legal dwelling unit on this site and be eligible for a business license, again, through the building code compliance report. And I'm wondering if there's a possibility of having that process begin before we make a decisive decision on the matter before us right now. And maybe I'm just being a politician and trying to avoid a difficult decision, but again, if the will and the forces are aligned that way, maybe we could take a less painful road. So, and this is maybe a question to the deputy corporate officer or yourself. So
Yeah, no, with respect, that's not for us to do. It's what our job is to do is to make a decision based on the planner's report, the attachments, and all the documentation. To initiate any process is not up for us to do. Okay. And certainly the applicant has that ability, and that has been relayed to the applicants what their options are. I will ask our deputy corporate officer or planner to comment if I've misspoke or anything here. Go ahead, Ms. Hanson.
So, council will need to make a decision based on the options provided. So the three options on page 11, bottom of the page, to either option 1, uphold the refusal of the license with written reasons. Council can determine whether they want A and B or just option A. They can issue the license or issue the license subject to conditions, but Councillor Shukin is correct. The applicants have been provided the option to hire the qualified professional to provide a report. So the purpose of this afternoon is to come to a decision. This is a hearing, and so and not postpone a decision. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if I can just summarize, so the special meeting has been convened at the request of the applicant under the Community Charter of 60, Section 5. And so we're asked to make a decision as difficult as this is, to make a decision regarding that, regarding the application, regarding the request to reconsider.
Great. Understood. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Gray.
And if I may, through the chair, can I ask staff then, I was asking the question about this building permit on page 25 of 53. And I think what we're hearing is that this probably applies to 783, not 779, and not 777, the next door neighbor house. Could I ask staff, which is it that they think it applies to?
I think they've already,
And on what basis?
they've already, well, this is all the information they have. I think the planner has already spoke, but you can reiterate what you
Just
said prior.
why it's not, I'm not asking for a reiteration, I'm just asking why is it related to 783 and not 779 or 777? I think 777 because of the lot and the plan number, but I'm not clear why it's, we're assured it's relating to one versus the other, given the dates.
So wasn't it the applicant that said it was related to 783?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to re-ask the planner if you could comment on this.
Through the chair, the information the applicant provided about 777 was in the supplemental package that was provided. That's not something that staff looked into at the time. We were just looking at records for the property addresses that we had, which was 779 and 783 Windfall. And that's what we received back under 783 Windfall. That's all I can add.
Thank you, that's helpful. And then the relationship, I'm just, do we know that it's for one or the other of the two buildings? The date is confusing to me. 1963 is the date on the permit.
Through the chair, as mentioned and stated in the staff report, that was the only date that we had, and just based on other records that we had, we assume that it is with the main dwelling, which is in the middle of the property, and that's just based off of a site plan that was dated 783 with dimensions from lot lines. Like I said, there weren't very many records that we had to look into the dwellings on these properties.
Councillor Rapp.
Well, to me, I just don't see that something that's so ambiguous like 60 years ago is really that pertinent, especially when it was the owner was listed as Mac Tipton, who didn't own the particular property that we're talking about at the time. I just can't see that it's that it's really that has much bearing on this. But anyway, the other thing is that under the options, as I mentioned before, the idea of a legal dwelling unit, as the mayor talked about the bylaw being fairly strict, but that's what I thought. But after listening to the building inspector talking about life safety issues and how things might be approved, it seems like it's a little broader than just kind of the way it's written, especially for non-conforming pre-incorporation buildings. So, that's just changed my opinion on really what we should do here. So,
Councillor Shuka.
I'm just clarity again from Councillor Rapp. Tell me again, sorry, what you think we should do. I missed.
Well, I just think that from what we've heard today, that the definition of a legal dwelling unit is a little broader. That approval has more scope than what we thought as being just, it has to be absolutely this way for pre-incorporation buildings. And, given that, if that is the case, then that kind of changes my opinion on it, that it's, it's just not written in stone to have something approved if it meets the life safety issues standards.
Well, we don't know whether it meets the life safety issues because the building inspector hasn't been there, right? He can't comment on, as he said, he can't comment on something he hasn't seen. Right, and so that the the planner has outlined the options that the applicant can go through, having a qualified professional going out there, taking a look at any potential deficiencies, and that would be brought forward to our staff here, right? Go ahead.
Mayor Little, thank you very much to yourself and to Deputy Corporate Officer Hanson for just realigning my thinking. Even if, no matter what we do here, well, sorry, if we go with option one, that does not preclude the applicants from moving ahead with the, again, the building code compliance report, which, and I agree with you, we should, if we're going to issue a building license for a building that could be an STR, we should ensure that it is a legal dwelling unit, particularly if the business itself is the house. So to me, that's really important. So with that, I am going to move option one, that we uphold the refusal of the license with written reasons until the building has been confirmed to be a legal dwelling unit per the definition of short-term rental in Machosen's business license bylaw number 352/2002, and also that the short-term rental business is confirmed to be in compliance with provincial land reserve use regulations per section 5111 of the Machosen Land Use Bylaw 259/1995. And just, if I have a seconder, I'll just have a quick comment to that. So,
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Epp seconds. Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
thank you. Just go back to my previous comments that, again, I don't make this motion with any joy at all. I have a lot of respect for the two applicants. I've worked with them in the past. I don't think there's a problem with this building, but the regulations around STRs have changed. And also, I think we take pride in this community about the respect we give the ALR. And there are some issues in terms of having this being zoned to agriculture and also in the ALR. And those are some issues that have to be addressed through the Land Commission. And the other thing is, I think staff have worked on this for a considerable amount of time. And I think for us, without clear and compelling reasons to turn our back on that work is really problematic, particularly when there are options in terms of, again, what Mr. Watkins said in terms of the approach he would take to the building permit as well. So again, I make this motion not with a great deal of joy, but with an understanding that there are some other options out there for the applicant. So, thanks.
Councillor Epp. No other comments. Councillor Donaldson or Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I appreciate all the information that we've gotten through both staff and the applicants, and also what the applicants have endured through this process. It seems that since 2017, the goalposts have continually changed. They've been very patient in trying to work with our staff through the changes that have come down through the province. I'm only reminded of this not too many years ago when abattoirs went through this same goal changing all the time. And the fact that this family has put a lot back into our community has provided a great service, I think, in having an STR. I'm hopeful that they would be able to meet the parameters that are set out here. I have some reservations as well, but I'm hopeful in that our staff will continue to work with them for compliancy, and appreciate that of all the people who are not, that the Yokums are actually have come forward to recommend them for this, to come forward to be compliant and work within the parameters set forth. The ALC does have the other option of tourist accommodation. There's two components of that particular statement in the ALC pre-February 2019. So I'm not sure if that applies or not, but the ALC will be able to guide the Yocums through that as well, if that's another option. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, or the Yocums will be able to find a way to work with our staff to meet the requirements here.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, following on what we heard at the meeting today, I think it is true that the staff have reasonable cause to refuse a license. I think they've done a good job in the review, and I thank them for that. Clearly, it needs to be a legal dwelling under our bylaw, and we come up short. The ALC also needs to be involved and do their review and or response to the applicants for an STVR. I thought, based on the materials that we had, that the building permit itself was in fact tied to 779 windfall, but hearing what I've heard today, I realize that it is not, or it does not sound like it is, and so that knocks out the notion of it being a legal dwelling. I think one important point I would make is that as the applicants go forward, that we should do our best to respond to them in a timely fashion. There's a letter here on the record laying out that it's taken a long time for them to get here, and then I think the extra surprise at the end about the work through the ALC or the particulars of that work is important. But if we can do our best to move things along, if they come back with further applications, that would be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? I'm going to just now ask our Deputy Corporate Officer, has there anything that I've missed going forward?
Through the chair, it seems that you've captured everything unless Councillor Epp or Mayor Little have any additional comments on whether they support or oppose the motion.
I can reiterate my comments from before, that I'm supporting the motion to uphold the refusal of the business license based on that the building is not a legal dwelling unit as per the definition under bylaw 352/2002. And a business license cannot be issued for the building that is not a legal dwelling unit. That's basically, there's of course the additional ALC regulations as well, that they must, the short-term rental must comply with the provincial ALC in the regulations as required under section 5111. Councillor Epp, did you want to reiterate whether you're in favor or opposed to upholding the refusal of the business license?
I do support the motion, but with the hope that that it won't be too onerous for the Yocums to get approval. I think I do appreciate all the work that's gone in, and I really appreciate all the work by staff to look at all the different options. It ended up being a really complex issue. So yeah, I guess that's it. I do support it, and I hope that it will work out. I think we have so many illegal dwellings in Metchosin, well, all over, whether it's suites above garages or mini trailer parks, and people just keep doing it. And at some point, this councillor, the next one, is really going to have to figure out how to get a handle on it, because when people know the Yocums property is well kept and well run, and so it's difficult to have to see them going through this when so many others are getting away with things, and we're not dealing with those. So anyway, just wish them good luck.
Okay. Any further comment? With that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of upholding the refusal of the license, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you.